Recently, Elevenlabs launched their conversational AI. On paper, it's an amazing tool for building and deploying AI voice agents. It combines speech-to-text, LLMs, and text-to-speech models, as well as logic for turn-taking and interruption handling in order to create the developer platform. It also supports 32 different languages, as well as any of the Elevenlabs voices. And something that surprised me is that it has a native integration with Twilio, allowing you to deploy these agents that you build straight to a phone number very easily. Like I said, all of this on paper makes it an extremely good voice AI orchestration layer. But in this video, I want to explore whether this is actually the case in practice, as I do think there are a few issues that need to be mentioned before you start using it. By the way, if you don't know what I mean by voice AI orchestration layer, it is essentially combining those different AI models in order to create those seamless AI voice interactions. Also, just quickly before we begin, I want to mention that we've opened up a few limited spots at Artillo AI for new voice AI projects. So if you're interested in implementing this technology with me and my team, click the link in the description that takes you to our website where you can contact us from there. Okay, so first I'll start by showcasing the platform and how to build and deploy an AI voice agent on it. And then after that, that's when I'll go through the issues of the conversational AI, as well as some of the benefits of it too. Okay, so when we jump onto the Elevenlabs platform, we go down to this conversational area right here, agents, conversations, and phone numbers. The agents tab is where you build, deploy, and manage your agents. The conversations tab is pretty self-explanatory. It's where you get to look at the statistics, the transcript, the recording of the conversation your AI voice agent occurred or took. And then we have phone numbers. This is where you add and link a Twilio phone number to your conversational AI Elevenlabs account in order to deploy these agents for inbound purposes. So let's start by creating an AI agent in the agent section. Now you can start off with a blank template, a support agent, math tutor, video game character. It doesn't really matter. I'm going to select blank template and just call this testing. And then let's put this in brackets YouTube, create agent down there. It's a pretty simple platform. If you haven't used any voice AI orchestration platforms, then this will be, new to you. If you have used any platforms like Vapi, Retail, Cinderin, any of these, it is all going to be pretty similar stuff to you. Okay, so now we are on this agent section of the agent, and here we can choose what language we are kind of having this agent deployed under. And as you see, there are 32 different languages we can do. I am going to mention though, from experience, when you are building in languages that are other than English, the technology starts to lack a little bit, as a lot of these LLMs are trained mostly on English data and are therefore a little bit worse when it comes to the other languages, especially the text-to-speech as well. English is just the most common language, and therefore the LLMs that we are using are trained on a lot of English resources. Then we have the first message section here. So I'm going to just paste in, "Hi, Mario's Italian speaking. How can I help you?" This basically means that every time I were to test my agent, this will be the first message that the agent says. No matter what, it is a predefined message and it will always say the same thing. Then we have system prompt. So if you've ever built any sort of AI application or used an AI API before, then the system prompt is simply where you instruct and determine the persona of the agent for the conversation. So here I'm just going to again paste a prompt I have. This is a receptionist from Mario's Italian. You are to answer questions and handle reservations. Be confident and concise. You are in a phone conversation with the person. Remember that. Then I gave an example conversation, and then I just gave it some notes, which are like, because you're in a conversation, remember to say things out loud, i.e. 5 to 10 is spoken 5 to 10. Because potentially the TTS would say this 5-10, which we don't want it to do. So this is just an important thing to add. Anyway, I'm not going to go too into depth on prompting. Like I said, the system prompt, it's kind of what you determine the persona with. Then we have the LLM. So here you can choose the different models out there. As you can see, we have Google models. So Gemini 1.5 Pro, 1.0 Pro, and 1.5 Flash. Some of the GPT models as well, and the Claude models. And we also have the option for custom LLM, which I'll talk about later on in the issues as well as the benefits. Then we have temperature. This is a parameter that allows you to control the randomness of the LLM. So putting it down will make the LLM more deterministic to a certain extent, compared to having it high will make the LLM more random. Then we can limit the token usage. This isn't too important. I'm going to ignore this even. You just want to leave it at -1 always. Then we also have the option for knowledge base. I'm sure most of you know what a knowledge base is, so I'm not going to go into too depth. This is basically when you add some sort of file with some, specific domain information or context that can help the agent answer the different questions that the people would have. So for example, for this Mario's Italian, we might have a knowledge base with our menu so that the agent knows what our menu is. Because obviously the LLM doesn't know and isn't trained on a Mario's Italian's menu, right? So that's why the knowledge base is extremely, extremely important. And then we have tools. So this is very simple. The way that voice AI agents do tools is always a webhook where you send some sort of data to a webhook. So that will usually be in this community. We use a platform like make.com to, actually have the tools be accessed. So we can put the URL there. Then we can add a name and a description. The description usually prompts the agent on when to use the tool. So that is quite important. So if it's a tool that's called check time, then what we want to do is in the description, put something like, when this tool is used, you will get the time. Then here, what we can do, if we scroll down to the bottom, we can add parameters. Now, parameters are basically information that the LLM passes into the tool in order to manipulate something for some other reason. So if I were to give you, again, with the example of check time, if I were to put in the parameter time zone, and now the agent decides what time zone it wants to check the time for, so let's say Europe, London, that will give you a different time than California, right? So these parameters are used for tool calling. Now, another thing that the conversational AI does is have defined secrets. So this will basically just be like an API key. So we can have something like API key for, another platform that we need to use, like let's say Airtable, and then we can put in our value. And then in the tool section, we would use that API key potentially in the headers in order to add the secret in the header, so that when we are using the tool and sending that request, we are also providing the API key needed. Now, when you're using make.com, this isn't usually necessary. Okay, so that's really most of the agent-specific settings. There are things to do with analysis, as you see, security, advanced, and widget, which is to do with deploying on the web. But the only other thing we have is the voice. So obviously, this is extremely important. Now, what is amazing about this is that you can use any voice on ElevenLabs. If you are to go on to find more voices, you can literally search any of the library. Let's say you want Mark.
Hey guys, here's just a more casual, kind of relaxed version of my voice, and I think it's...
You can press add, and then we can go into use. And then if we were to go back to here, now as you can see, after we added Mark, we have the option for Mark. Then we have this TTS output format. So essentially, this is just like the quality of the text to speech. So how high quality is the voice going to be? So if we were to deploy this to the web, we can really choose any option here. But if we are deploying to a phone number, we have to use this option. So because I want to deploy this agent to a phone number, I am going to be selecting this option. Then what we have is this pronunciation dictionaries. It's actually a really useful thing for, things that you're going to say over and over again. Essentially, ElevenLabs has this option to prompt the model to pronounce things differently or pronounce things in a certain way. Let's say Artillery AI, the development studio I run, isn't something that most text-to-speech models are trained on. In fact, probably none are trained on it. So potentially, if I were to type into the text-to-speech or give that, text format to text-to-speech, it would say it incorrectly. So what we can do is kind of prompt it with a pronunciation like the Lexicon dictionary in order to have it to pronounce things correctly when you start getting into technical things and it isn't too important. Then with the voice, we have some settings, which is just basically, how much do we want to optimize the streaming latency. So this is basically when the LLM outputs a bunch of text like, hi Hugo, how can I help you? How quickly are we getting the ElevenLabs voice to stream that text? So as you can see here, configure latency optimizations for the speech generation. Latency can be optimized at the cost of quality. So because we want latency to be quicker, the voice is just going to be worse because we're prioritizing speed over quality. I'm going to leave this at 2. It doesn't really matter too much. You can play around with it and then you can notice certain differences, but that's up to you to do with testing. Then we have stability. So this is basically how consistent or expressive the voice is. So the lower, the more consistent, the more monotone the voice is. The higher, the more expressive the voice is. So I'm just going to leave this again halfway through. Then we have similarity, so higher values will boost the overall clarity and consistency of the voice. Very high values may lead to artifacts. So you again want to keep this kind of in the 50% range. Elevenlabs leaves it as 0.8, so I'm sure that is a pretty good basic default. Next, we can go into the analysis tab. This is basically post-call, what are we doing with the data we get on the call? So let's, for example, analyze a certain thing. So, was this call successful? Let's just say we're doing this Mario Italian one, and if someone books a reservation and they have a successful reservation, that is, our goal, and our criteria is to check whether it is a successfully booked reservation. And then we could just prompt, please check, did someone book the reservation on this call? We can also define some data collection. So let's say on this call with the reservation, we want to know what time the reservation is. We can collect that by adding an item, putting the type of data it is, so string, boolean, integer, and number. So for the date, we would have string because we're going to have it as like 20th of Tuesday or something. And then here you want to add and describe the data that we're looking for. So the date of the reservation. We would have to be specific that we are looking for the date of the reservation, not today's date, for example, in order for the analysis to do it correctly. Okay, so then we have enable authentication. I don't actually know what this means. I couldn't find it in the documentation either, so I'm just going to ignore this. I would keep it as off, as that is the default, and I don't know why I would want the user to authenticate before connecting the agent, so I'm just going to leave this as off. Then what we have is allow list. So this is actually quite important. Let's say we are deploying this agent to the web. We only want, the code that we have over here to embed the voice AI agent on our website to be able to be deployed on our website. So we don't want that code being taken to another website. So that is really important to kind of only allow it on your website. Then what we can also do is enable overrides. So whether we are able to basically change and the configuration of the agent right before the start of the conversation. So the first message, the system prompt, or the voice, usually you would keep these two on and the other off. If, for example, we're having a dynamic message where we are changing, the day. So, hi, how are you doing on this Tuesday? Or hi, how are you doing on this Wednesday? That's a first message that would have to be overridden every single time. Also, the system prompt, we are going to be changing something potentially dynamically. For example, let's say it is the AM of the restaurant, the menu might be different as the PM, so we want to change what the system prompt looks like. Okay, so we can move on to advanced. Now we have turn timeout. This is quite important. The maximum number of seconds since the user last spoke. So essentially, if someone just goes silent for 7 seconds, the agent will prompt and basically be like, hello, are you still there? That type of thing. I would keep it at 7 to 10 seconds. That is kind of the area of time that we want to check if the person is still there on the phone. Max conversation duration. This is currently at 300 seconds, which is 5 minutes, I believe. You probably want it a little bit higher, as conversations can go longer than 5 minutes, and you don't want it to just like cut out completely. But you do also not want to just put this onto 10,000, as someone might just abuse the conversational AI and cost you a lot of money. So it is better to keep this at something like 500 to 600. Okay, this is quite important as well. Keywords. This is basically defining keywords that are going to be more common and a higher likelihood of being in your transcript. So for example, like I said, Artillo AI, that is something that a text-to-speech model isn't trained on, or a speech-to-text model that isn't trained on. So what we want to do is basically increase the likelihood that the text-to-speech model knows I'm talking about Artillo AI when I say Artillo AI instead of, a different spelling. So we want to kind of boost that keyword. Then we also have user input audio format. So select the input format you want for your automatic speech recognition. This I would leave at the default, as it basically is just talking about what quality of audio is going to Twilio. The higher, the better, really, because it's just going to be easier for your for your speech to text model to understand and transcribe correctly. Okay, then we have this client events. So select the events that should be sent to the client. The client is essentially just the things that you're sending over either after the call for analysis or, during a tool call. It's not too important, and you can get a good up and running agent without worrying about client events. Then here we have this important section, which is store call audio. So, are we allowed to record the call audio or not? Because obviously for compliance, you can't just call someone and record the phone call without telling them. So if you don't want to tell them and they haven't consented, then you must, not store the call audio. So this is something that you probably want to have off unless, you configure your agent to be like, this call is being recorded. Are you okay with that? If they say no, you end the call and delete the recording. Okay, and then the widget section is where you would deploy this to the web. Like I said, I'm going to deploy this to the telephone and I'll show you how to do that. You would just embed the code into the website you're using. It's extremely simple. You can, change the appearance, make it more compact, make it more expanded, change the color, etc. It's very simple. This is all self-explanatory. Okay, so like I said, we've configured the agent. Now what we want to do is deploy this to a phone number. So we'll go into the phone number section, press add. Then what we'd want to do is jump onto a platform like Twilio. Well, it has to be Twilio, and we would want to buy a phone number. So it's pretty simple. You just go into phone numbers, manage active numbers, or buy a number, in fact. And then what we could do is search a country that we want to do this for. So let's say I wanted to buy a United Kingdom number. That's where I'm from. We could just simply buy, press OK. I'm not going to do it because I have a number already to add to the Elevenlabs. But then you would press simply buy and go from there. So once you bought your number and you could go back to the dashboard, then we have to grab these two pieces of information, which is the account SID and the auth token. So we're just going to copy those and then both paste them into this section of the import your phone number from Twilio. Then you're also going to add the number of the phone. So if it was a US number, you're obviously going to change this to United States and then, add the other part of it. And then you can just add any sort of label. So I'm just going to put testing number. And then you simply press import. That's how simple it is. Once you get this kind of extra tab, you're going to add what agent is actually handling that number. And now, as you can see, it says saved. Okay, so the first thing I want to mention, as I believe it is extremely important to talk about, is the pricing. Now, the Elevenlabs Conversational AI costs 1,000 credits per minute. Most of the other competitors out there and voice AI orchestration layers are charging around 5 to 10 cents per minute of AI conversation. This makes the pricing extremely easy. If you are being charged 10 cents per minute and let's say your AI talks for 10 minutes, then you know that is going to be $1 spent. But the conversational AI is a little bit more difficult because the credit value, so how much 1,000 credit costs, is dependent on the plan you are paying for with Elevenlabs. Basically, Elevenlabs has a few different plans. We have free, starter, creator, pro, scale, and business with all different monthly payments, with business being the most expensive at $1,320 a month, which is obviously extremely expensive. And at that plan, so the most expensive one, 1,000 credits is valued and is worth around 12 cents. So then your conversational AI would cost 12 cents per minute. But if we just lower the plan by 1 to scale at $330 a month, those 1,000 credits now cost you 18 cents per minute. And if we went down one more time to Pro, it is now costing you 24 cents per minute. These kind of prices per minute are just not competitive. There are other platforms doing it cheaper and better. Now, this is what the price of the conversational AI is today. Currently, they are not charging you for the LLM cost, which they will be charging you in the future. So that pricing will be bumped up even more in the future. Like I said, this pricing is just not competitive with the other platforms out there and is a huge issue when deploying for big companies. Okay, let's move on to the next issue I noticed when reading the documentation, going kind of deep dive into the conversational AI. Unless I'm mistaken, you cannot use it for outbound calls. When I looked into the API reference, there is no way to, send a call like there is with Vapi and the other platforms out there, where you can, send an outbound call to a phone number. The only thing you can do with a phone number is, select an agent to be the inbound agent for that number. Now, for most, this is again an issue because a lot of people want to have outbound calls with these AI voice agents, whether they be complete cold calls or kind of warm outbound calls where someone fills out a form and then the agent will call them in order to ask certain questions or whatever it is. Outbound calls are an extremely important and crucial implementation of this technology. Now, something I do like about the conversational AI, which we kind of saw, is how easy it is to build and customize these AI voice agents. the platform is extremely nice. We have all those Elevenlabs voices right there, which, we can instantly test them on the platform itself, and all of that making the customization process extremely easy. Another thing that I have to give credit to the conversational AI is just how easy it is to deploy these agents to the web as well as to a phone. Like we saw, it has a native integration with Twilio, which means that we just put in our account SID and our auth token as well as the phone number, and boom, like that, we have an agent ready on that phone line to be able to receive phone calls. And if we want to deploy it to the web, we just go to that section on the customization, grab that code to embed the model onto a website, which again is extremely easy and quite useful. And there's another thing I want to mention about the conversational AI, which I like, is that it has the ability for us to choose a custom LLM. Now, the reason why I like this so much is because I try not to rely on a single LLM when I am building my voice AI agents. I like one LLM making most of the decisions. I like one LLM kind of managing the conversation, making sure the main LLM isn't doing anything wrong. Things like that allow you to customize the flow of the LLMs. And now with LLM technology getting faster, this kind of lets you combine multiple LLMs in an architecture in order to increase reliability and accuracy, which without the custom LLM isn't possible by just prompting one single LLM. So again, this is something I do like. Now, obviously, I've mentioned there are issues, so let's go back to the topic of what issues there are. And one that I don't like, which isn't crucial, but is nice to have, is for the AI to be able to hang up, which the conversational AI does not have that ability. Both humans are able to hang up the phone, and really in a conversation you can kind of tell whose responsibility it is to hang up the phone. I don't know how to explain it, but you can just feel that. And in conversation, it would be nice for the AI to be able to hang up the phone after they've said something like, goodbye, thank you. There is no more conversation that is going to be had after that. And sometimes, someone isn't able to hang up the phone and they would be confused. Why hasn't this person hanged up in 4 minutes or whatever, And that could potentially even increase our costs. But I do want to mention this is a marginal issue, It's not the end of the world for the AI not being able to hang up. It is actually quite nice to not have the hang up feature because, you don't want the AI to accidentally hang up or hang up way too early. So this isn't a huge issue. One issue that is actually big in this kind of AI being able to do things is that it cannot transfer calls. This is something that is extremely important for most of my clients. They want to integrate these AI systems into their already existing call centers, where if an issue persists with the AI, it can warm transfer that call to an agent, which is able to, handle the request that was tried to be fixed by the AI, but now going to be handled by the human, so that we can, kind of lean down our call center operation rather than just completely get rid of it. So yeah, that is another really big issue for me. Now, I have 2 more points, and these are both actually good ones and credits to the conversational AI. I don't want to make this video acting like the conversational AI isn't a good piece of technology. It is actually really impressive what Elevenlabs have done. They've just come out of nowhere and created this voice AI orchestration layer, which is, extremely impressive. But there are just a few of those issues. Like I mentioned, can't transfer calls. The pricing is just not competitive. And obviously it isn't able to hang up a call either, which are issues for me. So the last 2 kind of good things I have to say about the conversational AI is the latency is extremely good. As you saw in the conversation we had, it responded extremely well and had pretty good interruption handling as well as turn taking, which means that the core conversational technology is good. Another thing that is useful is that it has call history or logs. It records the conversation, it transcribes the conversation, it gives a summary of the conversation. This kind of stuff is just useful when deploying these things because we need to be able to analyze conversations in order to, test and make sure that these agents are reliable in the real world in production. Okay, so that's it for the video. Those are really the only things I wanted to mention. The price, the hanging up, and the transferring are all just things that cause me to not want to switch to a platform like this. I think it's very cool to be able to just quickly deploy onto your website and play around and test it. But at 24 cents per minute, which is what most people's plan would be on, I don't think anyone is going to spend $1,320 a month just to have a cheaper conversational AI, is just too expensive. So I think sticking with the other platforms out there is the way to go.